Architecture is just like writing a book. We start with just an idea and try to transform it into a physical object. Architecture is not something that is very heavily accessible. After all, it is not every day where we can create a full-size building and study it. That's why models are made. They are one of the most accessible form of physical creation in the field of architecture. It doesn't need a lot of money, tools, or resources. It can be done with a cutter, cheap materials, some glue, and a plan. Model making can be divided into 6 parts. This includes creating an idea, making a sketch, making patterns, cutting, assembly, and finishing. Coming up with an idea is the most important thing. We firstly need to think about the concept that we are following. For example, we can choose a more minimalistic design concept rather than a classical concept. From there, we can connect it to the elements of art and think about the colors that are used in the design, the materials that may be used, and the overall shape. A suggested method of doing this is to use a piece of paper to make a very rough sketch of what the design might be. Model making requires a drawing or a sketch. It doesn't have to be in any certain format. When we start out, what's important is that we are able to understand the drawing and all the details that are on it. When we look on the internet, people have different drawing styles and methods. Drawing can be in any form, 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional. Professional architects may be required to follow a certain format, but as a current interest, starting out in any format that is comfortable to you is most important. Things to look for in our sketches or drawings are measurements, materials, and its structure. From the sketch that was made, we will need to scale the measurements down to a scale that you think is appropriate. When choosing a scale, the simplest way to choose a scale is that detailed models should be larger in size and models with smaller details should be smaller in size. To create the cutouts of the material, we need to make the pattern with a millimeter block paper and the measurements that are from the sketch. This means that the measurements that are needed are the ones that have already been scaled. From there on, all that we need is a ruler, pencil, and a cutter. The importance of making patterns lies in the next step of turning it into cutouts with the actual material. It is needed in order to make the most accurate dimensions and making less mistakes, leading to the possibility of edges that do not line up to each other. This does not take a lot of time to do and may only take around 20 minutes. After we have the patterns, we can transfer the shapes onto the material that we want to use. So if the material that is going to be used is PVC, we will transfer the pattern to that material. The preferred method to do this is to take the templates or the patterns that we made before and tape it lightly on the material and use a ruler to match the line. It is basically to duplicate the shape of the pattern. After we transfer the patterns onto the material, all we have to do is cut it with a cutter. Cutting is a very important aspect in model making. They define if the model is finished or unfinished. It will also affect the conditions when the different parts are being assembled together. When cutting straight lines, it is always best to work with a ruler and a cutting tool that does not have any dull blades. There is also a certain method of cutting that is best for the final finish. When cutting, using a metal ruler is very important. Never use a plastic ruler because cutters can easily cut through it, while metal rulers do not get damaged in terms of its ability to maintain a straight edge. When cutting, it is very important to make sure that we do not have a dull blade. It may seem like a simple thing, but using a dull blade will lead to material damage and the cuts aren't considered as clean. When cutting, never directly cut with strength. It should be done with different passages that differ in strength. Personally, I use the first passage to create a small cut that lays a passage for the other cuts. Every time we make a cut through that passage, we should use more strength to go through the material. This will help to create cleaner cuts that are more accurate in straightness. In order to achieve smooth edges, it is always a good idea to use sandpaper to sand the sides. Assembly of the panels may seem very simple, but based on my past experience, it is very difficult to do. Remember, before doing the assembly, any panels that require painting should be done first. The gluing is not that hard of a process, but being able to do it in an accurate manner is very difficult. As an example, if you want to assemble a wall and a floor to a 90-degree angle, it will be very difficult to get the exact measurement. The The assembly process is also a stage where some mistakes may be made and where glue could go everywhere. This does not really matter as long as there's not too much glue being used, because it will take more time to dry. It will also create a higher chance where the model is filled with glue residue. Finishing the product is very simple. Because the model has already been assembled, all we have to do is focus on the removal of any unwanted residue and the removal of edges that may be too long or too short. After that, you should have a finished model. And that is my basic guide on model making.